Okay, so yesterday we talked about using the point slope formula given a point and slope. Tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at, well, what happens if you're not given slope, but you're given 2 points? So what you guys should remember is you know what to do here. You should already know that if you have 2 points, that you can calculate the slope yourself. So I've shown you 2 ways to do this. Remember, the first thing that I told you is that slope is simply change in y over change in x. It's the distance between 2 points. So you can use the slope formula, which in the slope formula you're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's if you're struggling with the distance part of this. If you don't know how far it is from one point to another and you prefer to just subtract, you can do that, okay? Then you're going to use point slope. So remember, we worked on point slope yesterday and today in class. So remember, in point slope, it's y minus y1 equals m, which is your slope, times x minus x1. So if you're given 2 points, you need to choose which one's going to be your x1, y1, and which one is going to be your x2, y2. Then you calculate your slope. Then you use point slope formula. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and turn these into slope-intercept form just to practice. Okay, so this is a multi-process. It's a multi-step process. So make sure you're organizing your work. So I'm going to look at this example. It says find the equation of the line given the 2 points. Okay, so after we do that, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it in slope-intercept form, just to practice solving for y. Okay, all right, so if I look at the first example that they gave me here, number 7, they've given me 2 points. So in order to write an equation of a line, I'm going to need to have the slope, and I'm going to need to use one of these points. So the first thing that you can do is go ahead and label. This could be your x1, y1, and this can be your x2, y2. And all that means is that you've chosen to use, this is your first point and this is your second point. It does not matter which point you choose to use. You will get the same answer, okay? So first I'm going to calculate my slope. So I'm looking for the change in y. So the question is, how do you get from 7 to negative 1, okay? Or you can simply do the subtraction. If I have negative 1 minus 7, I'm going to get negative 8. Then you want to ask yourself, how do I get from negative 3 to positive 1? Or you can simply do the subtraction. 1 minus negative 3, so it becomes plus 3, is equal to 4. And then negative 8 over 4 is negative 2. I've now found m. Remember, you've got to use m in your point slope form. Okay? So now I've done the first step. I used the slope formula. So I noticed that to get from 7 to negative 1 was negative 8. To get from negative 3 to positive 1 was positive 4. Then negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. Now I'm going to use my formula like I did yesterday. So I'm going to have y minus, and we chose to use these points as our x1, y1. So my y1 value is 7. So minus 7 equals, now I'm supposed to use my slope. So my slope is negative 2 times x minus, and if you look right here, your x1 was negative 3. So remember, a negative negative makes plus 3. Okay, so now I've done step 2. So I found my slope, then I used my formula, and all I did was substitute in those values. Now the last thing we're going to do right here, remember, I'm going to go ahead and put it in slope-intercept form just to make it more user-friendly. So I'm going to distribute my negative 2. So I have y minus 7 equals negative 2x minus 6. I still want to get y by itself, so the opposite of subtracting 7 would be to add 7 to both sides. It cancels on this side, and I get that y is equal to negative 2x, and then negative 6 plus 7 is positive 1. And now I have my equation in slope-intercept form. If I wanted to, I could identify my slope, or m, which is negative 2, and I could also identify b, which is known as your y-intercept. In this case, it is positive 1. Okay, so that was a lot. That was a lot of work. Notice that my work is very organized. Step 1, find slope. Step 2, use point-slope formula. Step 3, solve for y. That's putting it in slope-intercept form. I'm going to do the same process for number 8. Okay? So step 1, I went ahead and I labeled my points. So I have my x1, y1. I have my x2, y2. Okay? The next thing that I did is I asked myself, how do I get from negative 7 to negative 4? Or if you prefer, you can do negative 4 minus a negative 7. So that's plus 7, right? Because minus a minus. So from negative 4, from negative 7 to negative 4 is going to be going up 3. And that's what negative 4 plus 7 equals. Then I'm going to ask myself, how do I get from negative 6 to positive 3? Well, that would be going up 9. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can use the formula. 3 minus a negative 6 would equal 9. And then that reduces to 1/3. So I've now found my slope. Okay? Now I'm going to use my formula. So I have y minus, and we labeled this as y1, so negative 7 becomes plus 7, equals your slope, which you found is 1/3, times x minus, and my x1 was negative 6, so it becomes plus 6, and now I filled in all my values. So from here, I'm going to distribute my 1/3, so y plus 7 equals 1/3 x plus 2, because 1/3 times 6 is 2. Then I want to isolate y. I want to get y by itself. So I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. I'm going to bring down my y. I'm going to bring down my 1/3 x. And then 2 minus 7 is equal to negative 5. So now I have my equation in slope-intercept form. My slope is 1/3. My y-intercept is negative 5. Okay? So what you should notice is if you follow the process step by step, you can do this. You guys know how to calculate slope. You can use the formula, or you can just ask yourself, how do I get from negative 7 to negative 4? That's up 3. How do I get from negative 6 to positive 3? That's up 9. Okay, so you can use the formula if you prefer, or you can use the change in y over the change in x. Reduce your slope. Step 2, utilize your formula. So you just substitute the values in that you've already labeled. Okay, we have x1, y1. Just put those in your formula. We have m. Just put it in your formula. And then the last step is to solve for y. Okay? All right, so I've done 2 examples for you. I want you guys to pause the video, and I want you to do number 9 and number 10. Then I want you to restart the video and check your work with mine. Okay, so hopefully you guys got the same answers as me, but I'm going to walk through my work just to make sure that you understand. So I had 2 points, so I knew that the first thing I had to do was find my slope. So I asked myself, how do I get from a negative 1 to a negative 6? I would have to go down 5, so that's where this negative 5 came from. Or if you wanted to use the formula, negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Then I asked myself, how do I get from 2 to positive 4? Well, I would have to go up 2. So my slope was negative 5 over 2. I labeled that as m. Then I used my formula. So I have y minus, but my y1 was negative 1, so it became plus 1 equals my slope, which is negative 5 over 2, times x minus, and then my x1 was 2. Then I'm solving for y, so I distribute. That's where I got negative 5 over 2x plus 5. The opposite of adding 1 was subtracting 1, and then I got my equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 4. Okay? For number 10, I asked myself, how do I get from negative 8 to positive 7? That would be up 15. How do I get from negative 3 to positive 2? That would be up 5. Then 15 divided by 5 is 3. So m, or my slope, is 3. It goes into my equation where m is. Notice my negative 8 turned this to plus 8, and my negative 3 turned this to plus 3. I distributed my 3. That's where the 3x plus 9 came from. The opposite of adding 8 is subtracting 8, so I did that to both sides, and I got y equals 3x plus 1. So now I have an equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so that was a lot. Hopefully you're getting fairly confident with this second part down here because we've been doing that for 2 days now. Finding slope, we spent a week on that. So now we're just taking those two concepts and putting them together. Okay? All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to rewatch the video if you're struggling and you don't know what you're doing. Or you can look over your notes, but you need to come prepared to class tomorrow. We will start by working number 11 and 12, and then we will move on to another activity. You guys have a fantastic night.